Well, good morning. My name is Lisa, and this is my husband, Jason. And we have been married for 22 years.
Awesome.
Thank you. And
She's a saint.
about 4 years into being married, I was a brand new Christian at the time, and I paid the bills. And we lived on a very humble amount of money, and I started to get nervous because, pay the tithe, pay the bills, see the bills, pay the tithe. Oh, what do I do? And I started to rob Peter to pay Paul, and hold back on the tithe because I would see the bills that needed to be paid, but I'm gonna pay the tithe. Well, I started getting behind, and then that made me really nervous too. And the Lord led me to Malachi, and I want to read that. And it's Malachi 3, verses 8 and 10, and it's NIV for verse 8. It says, "Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings." I stopped and I went, oh, tithes and offerings. Uh-oh. I'm not even tithing. And offerings? Okay. Verse 10 says, "Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing, there will not be room enough to store it." And I went, oh, he said to test him. What? Okay. So I'm convicted by the Holy Spirit. I go to Jason. We pay up the tithe. And we decided we're going to $20 offering. I'm going to test the Lord. And I just couldn't believe it. I was so floored by the Lord, and it wasn't a lot of big things, but little things started to roll in, unsolicited of people. $200 from my mom. Now, I know she knew we needed a bed frame. We were sleeping on a mattress on the floor. There it goes.
Me?
She sends $200, and I thought, wait, I gave 20. She sent 200. That just blew me away. And then, we got $50 back from some rebate on a utility bill. So it was just all these little things. And so from that point on, I became accountable to my husband and would bring everything. And we would just start from ground zero. And out of that experience, I realized that there's only one bill that I have to take care of. And that's to give my tithe and my offering to the Lord. And he'll take care of the rest. I don't have to look at any of it. I don't even look at the bills first. I pay the tithe and the offering, and then I pay for the bills. And we go from there. And he's never, ever failed us in the things that we needed.
Good morning. I could probably spend way too much time. I wrote something out that I wanted to share with all of you. It's really a particular story that stands out. But I'll tell you, as pastors, you tend to live your life kind of in a glass house that everybody's watching, everybody's checking out what's going on. And because of that, one of the things you learn is to not say when times are tough, because people will immediately want to come up and be like, oh, let me help you. And it would be very easy as a staff member to sort of like milk the system. So you have to actually go out of your way to make a point of not telling people. So some of these things, I'm not going to list a bunch. I'm just going to tell you one quick story. But I do want to say, totally unsolicited, I could make a list of things like groceries that showed up at the front door and nobody knew, and we were praying and we had no food, and we went out and we drove back and there was like 11 bags or something. Yeah, so I can tell you a million of those. I'm going to just tell you one particular one that really hit my heart because I saw like, wow, this has changed. So as a child, I didn't believe in tithing. If you want to know why, I'd be happy to sit down and tell you one-on-one, but there was something that happened in my childhood I'm not going to go into now that really kind of turned me off to the idea of giving money to the church. The year is 2000. We've been married for a few years. I've been serving as the worship pastor on staff, but I wasn't like paid staff full time. I was working for the, in the secular world, probably making $45,000 a year to $60,000 doing corporate training, depending on bonus structures and stuff like that. So in Southern California, that's not a big living. That's for a single income family. That's pretty tough, but we were making it work. I was probably giving already about 30 hours a week. The good side of being a corporate trainer is when you're done at 2, 3 in the afternoon, because you start early, you can run over to the office and you can still put 30 hours in at the office. Lisa was giving a couple days at the office. God put on our hearts to go into full-time ministry, and we weren't really sure what that would look like financially for us. I was actually on the council at that time, so I knew what everybody on staff made. And I remember thinking, the senior pastor, I make more than him, and I make like 3 times what the next staff person makes. And I was like, Lord, why are you putting this in my heart? Because we're buried. I mean, we're underneath, we're backwards, we're trying to figure things out. We had a lot of debt and stuff. And I was in the middle of getting certified with some network certification stuff that literally, when I finished it, I was the 960th person on the planet with this particular grouping of certificates. And I knew that instantly I was a 6-figure guy just because, bam, I just finished this certification. And the Lord said, stop, full-time ministry. And I remember the sanctuary was empty. I walked in one afternoon and I was praying, and my pastor walked in and I said, hey, I know, because being part of the council, we've been talking about we really need a youth pastor, and we're looking actively to hire a youth pastor. And I said, Pastor, I don't feel called to be a youth pastor, but I feel called to go into full-time ministry, and I feel sort of stupid telling you this because, the old, like, why buy the cow if you're getting the milk kind of thing? Like, you already get me for free, but you want to pay me, and I'll be here full-time. And he looked at me, and I thought he was going to laugh, and he looked at me, and he said, it's about time. So the Lord had put on his heart like a year and a half earlier that when is he, don't say anything, but whenever he comes, that's the time. So I remember we had kind of long debates. I went home, we talked about it, prayed, and we thought, like, what are we doing? I mean, literally, think about the math. I think the person on staff that had been there the longest, who was paid the most, made about $800 a month. And I'm thinking, I'm going to come in like underneath that. So we prayed about it, we talked about it. Short version of that is we said, yeah, let's do it. This is what the Lord wants us to do. I went to my pastor, said, throw our name in. He, of course, said, you need to stay out of the council meeting tonight for obvious reasons. And I'll bring your name along with 4 other names from like current Life Bible College graduates who were youth guys. So we thought it was like a very slim chance. But he said, but I'll throw your name in the hat. So that evening, while the council was meeting, I received a phone call from a training company that was a competitor to the company I worked for. The salesman that sold the classes that I teach at my company had just left and gone to work for this company. He calls me and he says, Jason, he's an Assemblies of God guy actually, he says, hey man, we need you to come over to this company. And I said, hey, I told you I was thinking about going full-time. I'm going full-time ministry. I'm out of the corporate training, but thank you. And he goes, no, you don't understand. I'm in the president's office. And all of a sudden, somebody else grabbed the phone, says, hey, Mr. Silzle, I don't know, you don't know me, but I just hired Ron, and he says you're the best guy to teach this stuff. And basically, I can pay for one guy, because you teach these 3 different categories that you're licensed in. I want you, and you can travel all over the U.S. You can teach here. You can teach everywhere. I said, sir, I'm not interested, thank you. He says, no, I'm offering you $184,000 a year without even seeing you, and I'll give you a bonus structure up over $300,000 a year if you'll travel. And I literally said, can you hand the phone back to Ron? I'm getting shaky just remembering it, because Ron got on the phone and I said, Ron, I'm going to consider this a carrot from the pit of hell. I got to go, and I hung up. Lisa was not home. I literally couldn't walk out of the room. I took one step, my knees buckled from underneath me. I sat on the floor for like a half hour in tears going, Lord, what have I done? And I missed part of this conversation. back in the sanctuary that day that the pastor and I were talking about, hey, I'd like to go full-time ministry, one of my questions to him was, I now know I'm going to be worth 6 figures with this education that I got. Should I go into ministry, or should I go for 3 years, get out of debt, buy a home, because I didn't see any way that I was ever going to have a home knowing what the staff made. And he said, I can't tell you to, like, not go into the work. He said, but I've never seen anybody who said, I'll just go make 6 figures for a few years, then I'll give it all up and go into ministry.
Right.
And when he told me I've never seen anybody do that, I said, we talked, and that's what led us to that. So anyways, that's not the end of the story. I'm trying to keep it as short as I can here. So, get back to my notes. So the council met that night, and Lisa and I were like, hey, maybe they will say no, and I'll be calling somebody back in the morning. Who knows? So the next morning, Pastor came and he said, hey, you're hired. Let's do it. And I was like, honestly, there was a moment there where I was like, is this good? Is this bad? It's good. This is what the Lord told us to do. And they actually said, hey, we're going to, I'm just being transparent here. They said, we're going to pay you $1,200 a month. I was like, woo, that's a whole lot more than the $800 that this other person made. And he said, you're going to do worship, and you're also going to be associate pastor. You know, there was a whole list of duties, and he said, but here's the deal. We're going to give you X amount of days a month to consult, because we know that you can earn more out consulting. And I thought to myself, well, with like, I mean, literally gave me like a week a month. Basically, they said, try and do it a day a week. Don't hit us with being gone for a whole week, but maybe you could do a day or 2. And I thought, man, I don't know how I'm going to make this up, but okay. So here's what happened. One of the companies that I was training, the company I worked for, sent me to this company. They eventually fired this company, called me and said, would you come train for us? And I said, well, talk to them first, because I don't want to non-compete, blah, 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 blah. Bottom line is, I ended up working for them. They hired me for like $1,500 a day. You know, I was making like $200 a day through the company, because they were making all the other, but anyways. So here's what happened. Unfortunately, there was only so many people to train, so I don't make $1,500 a day anymore. But what happened is about 6 months' time went by, and I was sitting down, I was doing our taxes, and like I say, unfortunately, they had said, hey, we're done. Like, you don't need you anymore, and that was kind of the end of that stream. But I was doing the taxes, and I said, babe, you need to come in here for a minute, you need to look at this. And she's like, what am I looking at? And I said, this is 6 months worth of figures, and we were, by the way, like hand and foot getting stuff into a place where we could live for $1,200 a month, which is still ridiculous in Southern California to do. I don't know how that worked.
You can't do that here.
Yeah. Well, and it's more expensive there.
Yeah.
Way more.
No,
but
I
yeah.
know.
So we did. So when you look at the 6 months, excuse me, it was exactly half of $184,000 that the guy offered me on the phone. And for me, that's, I mean, I only tell you these figures not because, ooh, wow, but because for me, that was a moment where I felt like the Lord said, can I not do anything that the world can provide for you? He unfortunately stopped right after that, and we lived on $1,200 a month for years in full-time ministry. But it did work. I have my conclusion. I'm going to actually read that part rather than just speak through it, because I want to really get this point out. By the way, little interesting note. By the time I was almost done training everybody, and it's funny, the scripture of Matthew 6, can't serve 2 masters. I actually, you'd think making $1,500 a day, you'd be like, this is exciting. I started to really regret that I wasn't in the church office serving the people that I wanted to serve. So it was really interesting, because you'd think, wow, but it started to really bug me. So unfortunately, that account eventually went away. I trained everybody there. So the big bonus days were gone, and we survived the next 10 to 15 years on way less than minimum wages in Southern California. But when the money was short, we would pray, keep quiet about it, and God would deliver bags of groceries at our garage with no one knowing. He always met us at our point of faith. We never thought we could own a home, being in the ministry, and he has blessed us and given us the opportunity to oversee 2. We still don't understand how it works. Times are still tight, and we have to be very careful and manage well. But at every point, he is faithful. And as it says in Luke 6, you can't outgive God.